Alright, so we got a simple dry fly parachute style going on today, and this is a Daiichi 1110. It's just a straight eye dry fly hook, nothing too fancy about it. We're going to start with a purple thread, and the purple thread is actually going to become the body of the fly. So it's important that you get a good purpley, deep purple color for the Purple Haze. And this is just Comparadun deer hair. So we're going to cut off a little chunk of it, remove the fibers from the back, and then we are going to stack that in our hair stacker by the tips, and that's going to give us a nice, even, and filled tail. Alright, now that those are even, we are going to do about a hook length of a tail. So you measure it and then do 4 or 5 really loose wraps up towards the eye. So you're starting towards the back of the hook, moving towards the eye. Then you tighten down. And that's going to give you a really clean body, and everything will be good and secure as well. If you just try and crank down on it right away, it's going to flare and it's going to frustrate you. So now we're going to come in with some scissors, clean up all that stuff on the front, and then just make it a good smooth thread covered deer hair body essentially. So I think all this stuff, all the deer hair underneath, helps it float a little bit more too, but I have no scientific data to prove or verify that. But you just make sure you get all this deer hair so there's not fibers that are sticking out. So just cut that and then cover the body. Alright, now we've got some chartreuse polypropylene yarn, parapost. There's all sorts of different types, but I usually use a high-vis type because I fish these in brook trout streams and I want to be able to see the fly. So with that material, we basically just ripped it in half because you don't need the full chunk of it. So we got half of it, and I'm going to just tie it right in the middle. Do a couple of wraps to secure it down, and then lift both of them up with your left hand. With your right hand, put wraps in front of it, which will help it start orienting straight up, and then do a couple of wraps behind it. And this post is going to be the hardest part on these flies, but with practice it gets pretty easy. And then with my left hand, I am wrapping the bobbin and the thread around the post. And then the super hack to this is if you grab a little bit of super glue and just put a dab of it on the post, which we are doing now. This is just Zap-A-Gap, brush on, and just put a dab of it on the side. Give it a little twist, and it's going to firm right up, so that post should stay right on the top of the fly, and it'll make the wrapping in portion of the dry fly hackle a lot easier. So now we're just going to go back onto the post, and now it's so firm that I'm just using my right hand to do all this tying here. And then wrapping down, put a couple more wraps down at the base. You can still see that super glue is still wet, so it actually works in our favor because when I grab this hackle, I'm just going to rip the bottom stems off. And if you're tying these at a semi-decent rate, you're able to use that super glue to even help the hackle stay in better. So I've removed the bottom, so it's just the bare stem that's being tied in, and the shiny side on this hackle feather is pointed out, and that's going to help these fibers to orient correctly, or at least the way that I like them. And cut off that little funky piece down there. We're going to get some dubbing, which is just ice dub. This is a UV lavender. I like regular lavender or the UV, but here we are doing UV, which is a little lighter, a little more blue than just regular purple. And we're going to dub that on the thread and you need really it's a microscopic amount. I mean, I like the bodies of these things to be really thin, really sparse. So you don't need a lot of dubbing. And then we're just going to wind that only around the post. So really you're just making a beefier body to this fly. No, I've honestly tied them without the ice dub, and they look just fine. So this isn't 100% necessary if you want to be truly Spartan, but this just gives it an added little flair of personality. So we've covered that up good, and now I'm going to take the hackle, and I typically do anywhere from 4 to 5 wraps of this hackle around the post. Obviously, the more you would do, the longer this pattern would float. The downside would be making sure you don't trap every single fiber with thread as you're wrapping around like I'm doing right now. And all I'm doing is 2 wraps around to secure the hackle, then put it on the side so you can go in and trim it out. And any other little stragglers that you've caught, which will invariably happen if you are just tying these for your first time, or if you've tied a fair amount of them, you just go in with scissors and chop off any little bit. And then I take my hand, and it should be strong enough to where you can give it a good tug straight up and it stays on. And that makes the whip finishing around the post a whole lot easier when you continue that. But you can see I've trapped a couple fibers. If I really want it to be a perfect fly, I would go in and undo it and make everything super fancy. But just so you can see, when this happens to you, you just trim the thread, and then you can go in there and you can cut those fibers out. Just staying pretty steady. Okay, so let me just come in, and it's a clean, you can see the whole thing from the bottom, and that right there is the parachute Purple Haze. So now I'm going to come in and finish up the parachute. And basically, I see some guys that just chunk these so small you can't use them, but I'm going to move a pretty medium distance. And that is a small stream tool of destruction right there. They are very popular in the shop, very popular on our small mountain brook trout streams, simply because they catch fish.